the pleasure of the board. We have a number of minutes here. April 9th, executive, April 16th, April 23rd, an executive session from April 23rd also, and executive session on Marshall Farm, April 23rd.
Let's see. Mr. Chairman, I think the only, I looked at the April 9th. We had tabled that our last meeting, and I think I only had one minor comment, and it was to move the entry roll call vote into the Article 6, Rousha Farm, so we have an entry here. And other than that, I told that to Joyce, so we could accept these as presented with the addendum.
You have those, Joyce?
Yep.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And 2 abstained.
And I did, Mr. Chairman, I did review the April 16 and 23rd, and I would be comfortable to move to accept those as presented.
Both, all 3 on the 23rd, Tom?
Yes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstained? 2. Thank you. Administrative business, I don't believe we have any, unless something has come in. Joyce, you want to grab Mike, just to make sure nothing has...
Just while we have a couple of seconds, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say that in Joyce's minutes, I have seen other communities what their minutes look like after a meeting. They're very short. Joyce does a phenomenal job. The detail that's into our meetings is really, you know, once in a while there might be a little typographical, you know, thing.
Oh, yeah.
But overall, the detail that's in our minutes is just phenomenal. She does a great job. Good job, Joyce.
Yeah. Yeah, I do agree with you.
No, she's not listening. We're trying to give you a compliment, Joyce.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Did Mike say there was any new administrator? Mike, we're just at the administrative, and I know we didn't have anything as of Friday, but...
I don't have anything new, Mr. Chairman, at this point.
Let's move right into old and new, and we have a cable license advisory committee which has been established. We've been meeting for a little over a year, and because of the election in May, we have an opening. Bob Pasquale was serving on that with myself. I was wondering if there's another member who's interested in joining that committee.
I'll join.
Thank you very much. You can join us. I think we'll be putting a meeting together, Mike, probably in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah,
We need to-
the next week or the week after, yeah, I'd like to get something, keep moving on that.
I don't believe I need a vote on that, Mike.
Do we have to vote?
Thank you, Kathy.
Good luck, Kathy.
Yeah, good luck.
Thanks.
Old and new again, Rousha Farm purchase. I was wondering if our town solicitor could bring us up to date as to where we stand.
Yeah, we're still proceeding toward the closing. Two of the main, I wouldn't call it major, two of the issues that we're addressing right now, there's a separate agreement with Mr. Rousha for the installation of the sewer system, which is a requirement, the sewer tie-in, which is a requirement of the purchase and sale. So that's a separate agreement that is currently being negotiated. That agreement has not been finalized. There's been a draft generated. There's some issues that still need to be ironed out. The other issue that still needs to be addressed, and we're talking about it, is the fact that there is a tenant on that property, the house. If you're driving up Clamshire Road, on the left-hand side, there's a house there that is currently occupied by a tenant of the Roushers. That house is part of the purchase. And under the purchase and sale agreement, Mr. Rousher is required to deliver the property free of tenants. So that issue still has to be worked out, and we're discussing that. And the one remaining issue that we were discussing was, or waiting for, was the CEA report, which I understand, I just saw a copy of it just now, as that report came in.
Yeah, just this afternoon, just for the board's notice, this came in by courier this afternoon. I only saw it at 2 o'clock. There's a cover letter that I copied for the board, just so the board was aware that it came in. I have not even opened one page of the book. It's a fairly thick document. I haven't even looked at one page. We have 2 copies, so with the board's permission, I would give the second copy to the solicitor to review in conjunction with the legal parameters of the closing for the property.
I would think the board's fine with that. Would anyone else like to read it?
I mean, absolutely, if there's someone, it's in our office, they can read it, or if someone wants a copy, we can go through that exercise. It's just that we didn't have time to get it out, those copies made for this afternoon for the board.
I mean, I didn't even read this cover letter. Did we get any kind of information? Positive?
Again, I did not speak to him, the report came, is here. I haven't, like I said, I haven't even opened the first page. It was just a cover letter indicating that it was done, and the cover letter that I gave you on the copy. Again, I didn't even have the opportunity to even...
Mike, just the second paragraph of the letter says that one of the issues, it looks like, was absent of all compounds tested for. So, I mean, that's good news. That was one of the areas we thought maybe some concern.
Right, there was one thing that delayed it a little bit, that the owner disclosed that there was a underground diesel fuel storage tank that had been removed from the property a number of years ago. So the consultant wanted to do a test pit excavation and soil sample of that area just to ensure that there was no leakage. And apparently they, as the chairman indicated, the analytical results indicate the absence of all compounds tested. So that's what caused a little bit delay. But beyond that, again, the comprehensive report is here, and we'll just need to have town council review it.
I hate to put Don Lowe on the spot, but Don's with us in the audience here today. So, Don, how do we stand on time with the grant? Are we still within the range?
I heard, Mr. Chairman, I heard the town solicitor highlight the remaining issues, but I mean, I'm not familiar with what there is for a timeline to get to a closing, so I have to answer a question with a question. Do we know how much time it's going to take to wrap up the remaining details?
I don't have a timeline on the tenant issue, and that's somewhat out of the town's control. It's really dependent upon the seller as to, you know, what his arrangements are with his tenant. But as of right now, the tenant is still there. We're not going to, you know, the intent is not to close on the property, you know, with the tenant still there. But I haven't not received an indication of how much time would be that they're requiring to, you know, have the tenant, you know, move to a different location.
I mean, I would have to have all of the paperwork into the state prior to the end of the fiscal year in order to have any shot to draw down the money. I mean, in a perfect world, they wanted it this week, so they would give them 3 or 4 weeks to process the paperwork, which is not unusual for a drawdown request, especially this time of year, as everyone's closing their books at the end of the fiscal year. If we were able to, if we believed we were able to close, say in 2 weeks, it could probably still be workable. But if there's doubt in the board's mind, or if the board feels that we're not going to be able to close by the end of the fiscal year, then my advice would be that we should notify the state as soon as possible that we don't intend to draw down the funds. If the board feels that we can close by the end of the fiscal year, then I would communicate with the state tomorrow. I personally would do that just to try to work out the details about how we orchestrate the drawdown and what's the minimum amount of time they would require, right down to it, and including, you know, if it saved a couple of days, I could drive the paperwork down rather than mailing it down. So I guess it's what the board's comfort level is that we can close by the end of the year. What I would not like to see happen personally is wait until June 30th, find out we can't close on the property, we've given the state no opportunity to redirect the funds, and then the state is left with the $353,000, which is generally speaking not a good thing for a grant awarding agency to have unencumbered money at the end of the year.
So I just, Mr. Chairman, if I may just have a comment. You said the board. I think, the board, I mean, I have an opinion. I think we all have our own opinions. I mean, I'm eternally an optimist. I think anything's achievable if you put your mind to it and make it happen. So I feel, we could do the due diligence to achieve it. Now, that's just my opinion. But I respect everyone's opinion on this board and our town solicitor. So I'm just expressing how I feel about it.
I mean, the message I'm trying to give to the board is I'll absolutely support whatever decision the board makes. I just want to be able to make you aware as well as I can of what the different parameters are that we're working under.
Questions from other board members? I guess, Bob, do you feel comfortable that this will have an answer on the tenant situation within the next week or so?
I can, certainly inquire as to the time, but of course, the other issue is it's on for executive session, but, as part of the grant, everyone is aware, is obviously the CR too. That's the other, the closing, the two issues that we just discussed, I mean, even if those would be ironed out within the next week or so, and that's possible, Mr. Rauscher could have plans with the tenant that I'm not aware of, and we could work out the final details on the sewer agreement. But the other issue is the CR. At the last Board of Selectmen meeting, I was authorized to go ahead and send our revisions to the state, which I did. That was on May 22nd. So the state has those proposed revisions to their last draft. Mike and I have both spoke with I think it was Mr. Truesdale that we spoke with from the state on that Friday, maybe it was the 22nd. May 22nd, we spoke with Mr. Truesdale after we had sent down the modifications on the 21st. But we haven't received back their formal response to our revisions. So that's another, that's the third card that comes into play here is the grant is obviously contingent upon the CR. We've got to get the state's revisions back to our revisions to see if we're going to meet, in the middle or not. So there's still some negotiation that's going on there, and there may be some further negotiation. And I don't have a magic ball to determine how long that's going to take. But, to Mr. Lowe's point, there's going to have to come a time when this board's going to have to make a decision one way or another as we get closer and closer to say it's going to happen or it's not, based upon the information you have, because we don't want to be caught in a situation that Mr. Lowe indicated that, it's June 30th and then we're finally telling the state, it's not going to happen. I can only report to you, the facts that I have, and that's what I've done. And whether or not we can close next week or the following week, there's some unanswered questions, the CR being one of them. I anticipate, Mike, that we'll hear back, I would think, next week from the state. But, the response from the state, again, it's something we would have to discuss, and, whether or not their response to our modifications are acceptable, that's something we don't know yet.
I guess with the information we have, what's the pleasure of the board?
Is still any discussion?
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's just a difficult situation now that we've come down to this, but I personally am not prepared to say sign for the grant with these unanswered questions, and I think it just makes more sense to just have Dawn notify the state and say that unfortunately we don't think we'll have adequate time to get all of the issues settled and that they can disperse those funds, and I would hope that at some future time we could go back and perhaps look at obtaining grants in the future.
Any other comments?
So I would, and I respect that. I would also say that, if there's a chance that we do get a response to the CR, next week, I'd be willing to adjust my schedule to meet as a board and go over it and make a decision on that as well. So.
Yeah, but I'm not even talking about the CR per se as the issues of the tenant and all those other things that need to logistically be worked out too. And I know you can't really put Bob on the spot and say, he can only deal with the issues, and if if we can't get the answers back in the time that we need to get them back, you know, I don't think, certainly the solicitor can be held responsible. You're really at the mercy of getting the appropriate answers from the appropriate people, and if it doesn't work out. I'm just saying, as we're down to the
Yeah.
wire now, and, you
Right, I
know,
mean,
I know a lot of hard work was put into, you know, acquiring the grant, but I still think that, you know, it's the responsibility of the town to make sure that everything is done that needs to be done. And it certainly doesn't seem, it seems like we're walking a tightrope right now in the time elements here. And again, you know, the town has secured the funding for the purchase of that property, and though I would hate to lose it, again, it's just my thoughts on it.
Mr. Chairman, I realize this is not a public discussion, but could I be allowed to say two things?
Sure.
Just under what we perceive to be the problems, Mary Rose, that the council brings up, the tenant in the building. I'm not an attorney, but I've closed on many houses over the years. And Mr. Roush agreed with that building that these were the terms of the sale. Upon closing, the house would be empty, the sewer line would be put into the house, and a key to his daughter's lock next door. Those are agreed in the purchase and sale. They're already agreed to. If by chance the town said, Mr. Roush, we want to close on the 19th, that means Mr. Roush has already agreed that that tenant will be out of that house on the 19th, and the town has agreed in writing already that they would put that sewer and the T in front of Mr. Roush's property. The glitch is over the pump. I understand.
No, the glitch isn't just a pump, and it just,
Okay, let me
okay, go ahead.
my train of thought.
Yeah.
I've talked to people who worked very hard on this project. I didn't, to the degree that some of these people did. They put a lot of time and effort in it. They assured me many times that money was involved in the budget request to handle the sewer issue. It was an agreement that town made because they had to buy the purchase and sale agreement that a contractor made. They didn't set this up themselves, they bought a contract.
I'll come on that.
Okay, and the agreement with the tenant being out of the house, that's an agreement.
Yeah, well, let me just comment on the tenant first. On the tenant,
Yeah.
under that P&S, and you're absolutely right, Mr. Grady, we're stuck with the terms of that P&S. The P&S allows Mr. Roush to close on that property as late as December of 2008. If he chooses. So if he comes back and says, hey, I want to accommodate my tenant, I want to give my tenant another 60 days to get out of there, then he has that right to do that. You know, obviously it's in Mr. Roush's benefit to close earlier, he gets his money earlier, so we're trying to work that out. But if he comes back and says, you know, I can't close, we don't have that date yet.
But has the town said to him, no. They haven't said to him, we'd like to close on the 20th, the 19th, the 28th, or the 27th, or any other date.
Yes, we have. We were discussing trying to close the first week in June.
Right.
But he had no obligation to firmly commit to that, nor, see what I'm saying? In other words, we were pushing because of the grant. And if you recall, Mr. Lowe came before this board maybe 2 months ago. He said, in order to get all the paperwork into the state, we really need to close sometime the first week in June. So we had conveyed that to Mr. Roush's attorney. They're aware of that. But there are some issues that still haven't been addressed. And Mr. Roush, quite frankly, under the P&S can say, well, I'm not ready to close because I need to accommodate my tenant. I want to, but we don't have that date yet, so I don't know. I don't know. And then on the,
This is not a public forum, and
Thank you for your...
we're just trying to be as open as we can. There's issues, and our town solicitor is working very hard on it. What I'm looking for is direction from the board to try and save some face with the state on future grants if we apply. And it's not fair to the state if we tie up money that we've tried awful hard to get, and that we're not going to be able to make the time frame, so that they may be able to help out another community, which may be ready. And I understand everyone's concerns. So I'm just looking for direction from the board. I'm willing to proceed if the pleasure of the board is to proceed. And I'm also willing to accept.
I have a question for
Sure.
Donnie. If there is a possibility that, all right, we might not be able to close on June 30th, but we may close on July 7th. If we're that close, is there any way that they'll hold that money knowing that we have worked very hard to make this happen?
The request has gone down.
No, actually, that question has been posed. I mean, not specifically 1 week, 2 weeks, but is June 30th a hard drop dead date? And the answer is yes. we have to have completed the acquisition of the property, closed on the property, and have the paperwork into the state no later than June 30th. Those are the terms of the grant. There are no extension options available to us.
But with the grant, with the state pushing that CR and the fact that we're still negotiating and we're awaiting their revisions, you know, it's a matter of them now bringing back their revisions for us to look at. We may very well say yes next week if we get to the CR, and then Mr. Rauscher not being able to relocate his tenant until after June 30th.
No, you're right. I mean, I can certainly understand why you're asking that question. The Board of Selectmen have been negotiating with the state on the CR for, well, at least a year now, probably about a year, I think the process started, right, maybe June of last year, June or July of last year. So the process that the board is in right now has been an ongoing thing. And knowing that that the board has made considerable progress with the CR, and although I'm not in on the discussions, I mean, it doesn't sound like you're probably very far away. The state has been asked multiple times, is there any wiggle room to extend beyond June 30th? And the answer has been no. There are other grants out there that you sometimes are able to get extensions on for certain circumstances. That hasn't been an option that's been made available to us in this case. And I mean, obviously, from my perspective, the best solution to this is all the issues get resolved, we draw down the grant money, and everything's successful. I get a lot of credit for getting the grant, but I mean, awful lot of people worked very hard on this grant. It wasn't just me. The second best, the worst solution would be, midnight June 30th comes, and we're still trying to, we're finally telling the state that, we just can't make it work. Because that would be the worst case. And then obviously, in between that is, at some point, whether it's tonight, next Wednesday, whenever, the board declares that, we're not going to be able to resolve the issue in time and give the state the option to redirect the money. I don't know that the state has another community positioned to redirect it to. I know that if I were a grant awarding agency and I knew this was possible, I probably would have been working with another community to see if there was somebody out there that was positioned to react in 3 weeks if they were given that signal. Whether they've done that, I don't know. I just know that I've been on the other end of that in the past, where I've worked on grants that we didn't get, but I had someone call me and say, we may not use up all our funds. Can you pull the trigger and get whatever you need done in a couple of weeks if we call you? And of course, I always said yes, but that never happened. The community always seemed to be able to work things out, but that is something that some agencies do. So I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Didn't give me the answer I wanted.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just get a clarification on one point. My understanding with the putting in the sewer is he still has access to the septic, the old septic system until that work is completed. Is that correct?
Yeah, he would have, yeah, exactly.
So that doesn't have to be installed and working by the No.
No, as a matter of fact, that's the supplemental agreement that would be part of the closing. The town would be required to finish install the sewer, put the line in, and install the sewer to Mr. Roche's house in the snub at his daughter's land within 1 year of the closing.
Okay.
See, because the P&S is very general. The P&S just says you'll install a sewer line up to his house. It doesn't really say anything. It doesn't put a time limit there. It doesn't say, well, what happens to the old septic system? Who's responsible for capping off the old septic system? What if the plumbing inside the house has to be changed because it's hooked into the septic system out back? Who's responsible for those types of costs? So those are the details we're working out. And I'm comfortable we can work those. That's any back and forth with any agreement. And one point I just want to make on the tenant issue is that now we're saying the P&S says that Mr. Rauscher is required to deliver the property free of all tenants. And this board, the town, if it wants to be a landlord, could certainly purchase the property with a tenant staying there. and enter into a tenancy agreement with the tenant. I mean, that's a, you know, you have that, the right under the P&S to have that property delivered free of the tenant, but certainly the town can waive that right and enter into a tenancy agreement with the existing tenant. I mean, those are just some of the ways you get around.
John, we're not gonna have a debate. No, we're not gonna have a public debate. Nope, sorry, John. What's the pleasure of the board so we can move on here tonight? Status quo?
Well, I guess just to make some movement one way or the other, I'll move that we instruct the Community and Economic Development Director to notify the state that we're not going to take the grant.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Yeah, on discussion, I think, based on the information I've heard tonight, I think we can wait another week and still tell the state the same thing, that we don't want to accept the grant, and we'd still be within a valid time frame. But
What's your opinion, Donnie, on that?
Personally, I don't think a week is a deal breaker one way or the other at this point. As far as directing or not redirecting the money, that would be my guess. But I do think if the board pushes it out a week, we need to be in a position at this time next Wednesday to be able to provide the state with the final answer. That would be my opinion. You know, whether it's tonight or next, you know, you don't have a meeting scheduled, I don't think, for next Wednesday, but certainly you can schedule one. But I would advise the board that if you do come in next Wednesday to resolve this, and you're in exactly the same state you are tonight, I do think a final decision needs to be made.
Could we amend the motion?
I'll
I'm trying to think of how-
remove my motion, Mr. Chairman, if you want to wait another week, I don't...
Well, we don't have a meeting scheduled, so I'm trying to think of a way to amend the motion so that if things have not changed, then we would instruct you without another meeting to move forward.
I'll amend my motion then, Mr. Chairman, if Jim wants to remove your second.
I'll remove the second.
To a week from now.
Mr. Chairman, I will move that in a week from today, which would be, what's today, the 4th? But June 11th, on June 11th, if none of the circumstances have changed, that the Community and Economic Development Director, Donald Lowe, would be instructed to notify the state that we no longer would like the grant, and that they could move on and try to dispense the money to another community.
Do we have a second to that?
Second.
Any other discussion?
just under discussion, I think that's more amenable to how I feel about it. So I appreciate that. But I want to take your motion seriously and say, if there's any change in the status, whether we got more language in how we feel about the tenant, or what the options are. 'Cause I mean, me as a board member sitting here, I'd like options in front of me, you know, A, B, C.
We will reconvene if there's changes.
Okay, so okay, good. So I'm fine with it, sorry.
Well, it's okay. Any other discussion?
No?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you, Sharice. Thank you, guys. Do we want to go into the action item list now? You know what, Mike, I think we'll bring up the police chief. I see him in the audience. I don't want to delay him if he's got something else. Mark, would you like to come forward? We have you on for the, and thank you for coming in. We had asked for a response from a letter that we received from the town of Lancaster in regards to using the fire range at the Pine Hill for annual weapons qualifications, and we know in the past you have asked us to ask for the special permit, which we have voted on the property up off the South Meadow, and Mayor Rose had asked me to come in and just clarify the issue with some information that the Fish and Game were refused a special permit on, I believe it was the 29th, if I'm not mistaken, and was wondering if you would change your...
In regards to what, the special permit?
The special permit for the police.
Yeah, the Lancaster range is probably about 7 miles out there, Pine Hill. It's kind of a difficult location for us to get to. Certainly wouldn't be my first option if we couldn't use the Clinton Range. As far as the Clinton Range goes, feel as though I've been caught in the crossfire, so to speak, between the Fish and Game and the town of Lancaster. I don't think anyone ever intended for the police to be thrown out. I don't think the neighbors ever cared when we were up there. We do qualify up there. We've been back and forth from private land owned by Bates, the gravel pit in the range. Over the years, we've gone to both locations, and if Lancaster didn't give us the permit, still would like to use the gravel pit. If we go to Lancaster, it would probably be some more expense as far as, might be some overtime expense, as a lot of the officers do qualify while they're working, and they're not going to be able to respond from calls from that location down in Lancaster up here. It's probably a mile off the road, a little over a mile off the road to their range, and it's along railroad tracks, along the narrow road, and it's not something that they're going to be able to respond in a timely fashion to a call. Our use of the range is minimal. We certify up there. We do it in the fall during the week when people are at work, and I don't think there's too many people out there in the yard. It's late October, their windows are closed, and I don't even think people really realize that we're up there a lot of the time. Occasionally, we haven't done it for a few years because of the expense. We do a night fire, and that's all done on duty. And the night fire is a familiarization drill for officers at nighttime. Over the years, we've had the Civilian Police Academy up there. There's a criminal justice class at the high school that we take up there. And if an officer buys a new weapon that he's going to work on a detail, usually it's a lighter weapon, the sergeant will take him up there and qualify him up there. So our use is really minimal. Occasionally, officers will go up and practice on their own. And we encourage it. It's good that they're up there practicing, but I'm not going to say I give out an awful lot of bullets for people to do that. It's not done that frequently. So our use is minimal. That is the most convenient spot for the Clinton Police Department. If we were thrown out of there, I would like to continue to use at least the gravel pit, and if that's a problem, I've been invited someplace even closer over in Berlin. I don't really like the surroundings. This house is very close by there, and the banking isn't very high. I don't feel it's as safe as the gravel pits. But as far as the range, I think the range is a safe spot. And like I said, we do it at such a time that I don't think it's bothering the neighbors up there. Is Lancaster going to grant us the special permit? Doesn't appear after what I read in the paper the other day,
But your recommendation to go forward with the special permit?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think that we should still shoot there and have Lancaster get a judge's order to tell us to stop. I was taken back by the call to stop shooting there. The town of Lancaster, for everything the Clinton Police Department, the working relationship that we have done over the years, it just floored me that I received that call. Like I said, we're caught in the middle, and I know that they probably really didn't like the idea of throwing us out of there, but I think it probably makes their case against the Fish and Game, stopping the Fish and Game better. And like I said, I don't want to be used as a lever for either side. I think that our use isn't bothering anybody. And again, I don't think the neighbors really care that the Clinton police are up there being certified up there.
Questions of...
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I mean, my understanding is part of why that special permit was denied to the Fish and Game was a combination of sound and disturbing the neighborhood, but a lot of it had to do with the EPA, contamination of the soil. There were other dynamics that were involved in that, and just not the ability to go and shoot. So I mean, again, I'm not sitting on that board, so I don't know how they would react, but I would think that the whole premise of why one party was denied it would basically hold true for anyone that was going to go shoot firearms up in
Yeah.
that area.
I'm not familiar with the EPA standards for the contaminated soil. I know there's ranges, just about every department in the state has them, and they use them. And I've never heard of anyone having a problem with EPA.
I'm just saying that, I mean, I think if you read the
Yeah, that's why I said it doesn't look like, from reading the paper, it doesn't look like they're going to issue us a permit either if they're using the same reasons.
Bob, what's your opinion?
We haven't filed for it. I mean, I don't have an opinion one way or another. That's up to the Lancaster board to decide. I mean, obviously, the circumstances for the police would be a little different because, to the chief's point, our special permit would be requiring, a specific time period in the fall, or, but like the chief just mentioned, we want to put it in, the police would also be able to periodically do, some practice. I don't know how that will work. That special permit hasn't been filed. We're kind of waiting the outcome of the fishing game, but
We plan it. This board took a vote several weeks back to file that special permit. So,
Can I just another question? How far, I mean, you said like Lancaster, I mean, other than Lancaster, Berlin as well?
Berlin's about 5.5 miles to their range, and it's right off the road. But, like I said, I just don't think it's as safe as either the gravel pits or Lancaster's obviously a very safe pit. I think the Army built it for them probably about 20 years ago. I've shot there in the past, and very safe pit, but it's just a tough spot to get to.
How many officers, I know I was down there last week.
Yeah.
How many officers at a time go and qualify?
Generally about 4. We do 4 a day, and 5 hours it's over. And the 5 hours isn't all shooting. That's reviewing the policy, the use of force policy, and then going up there, setting up, and then the actual shooting, and then cleaning the weapons afterwards. It's 5 hours.
So it's one officer for 5 hours?
Well, there'd be 4 officers together.
I'm just
We
saying-
set up 4 lanes.
Yeah, but I'm saying each officer, their qualification time is one time, 5 hours?
5 hours. That's a minimal amount that should be done. It should be done 4 times a year. I mean, the more, the better.
Yeah, but
the least of it.
how often have you done it?
We haven't been doing it.
Right.
Just for budgetary reasons, I haven't been doing it. We used to do an annual night shoot too, a familiarization drill at night. That didn't take 4 hours. It was done quicker. The sergeant would go set up. He'd call a car up. He'd go up there at 8 o'clock at night during December, and he'd knock off, the second shift on one day, and then he'd get the night shift. He'd stay over from 8 to midnight, and he would take care of the group that way. Then he'd come back at 6 in the morning. We'd be doing it in December when it was still dark out at 6 in the morning. Go up there, and it was all done while they were on duty, the night shoot. Like I said, occasionally an officer will come up and he'll want to qualify with a new weapon. If that happens once a year, twice a year, I'd be surprised. And probably about 6-8 times a year, I'll have an officer come up and request ammo to go use the range to just practice for himself because he wants to.
And you don't see any way that it could work out in that pit down where Lancaster does, which is not a home, hundreds of acres anywhere near it.
Yeah, I mean, that would probably be choice number 3. I mean, I could go to Princeton, that again, we wouldn't be able to respond from Princeton, but we wouldn't be off the road. Like I said, it's probably over a mile that you're off the road down there. The car bottoms out, and if you pull out over to the middle, the brush goes down the side of the car. If you have another car coming the opposite direction, somebody's got to back up until you find a spot.
Well, there's no way 2 cars can go. I mean, it's 9/10 of a mile. I went there the other night.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to get to. Once you get there, you got a beautiful range, but we just can't respond there, and there'd be some added expense going there. We'd probably start ending up with some overtime costs if we went there. Not a huge amount, but
Any other
You
questions?
said,
Chief, how many of your officers have memberships to licensed facilities in the state? You belong to Norco and Princeton?
yes, I belong to Norco.
Okay, how many of your officers actually belong to a private gun club?
I think there's probably a few that belong to the Clinton Fish and Game. I don't know of any others that belong anywhere else.
What is the membership, what is your membership fee a year for
At
you
Norco?
to personally belong to Norco?
$50 a year if you contribute 10 hours of labor at the club, so it's $50 a year.
Otherwise, it would be...
It'd be $100.
It would be $100 a year. And we have how many officers? 20?
It'd be 28.
28.
Any other questions of the chief? Thank you, Mark, for coming in.
Okay. Good night.
Right. All right, we're back to, anything on the action item at this point?
No, the only thing I'd like to just bring up is the first item, the board talked about meeting with some town managers to talk about reorganization, reorganization, structure of government. There's a gentleman in Ashland that's in this area that was offering to meet. They have a committee and they kind of split up and go around the state whenever they can cover different regions. He indicated that his board meeting is on the same schedule as our meetings. So he was wondering if there was any mutually agreeable date, if the board still wanted to pursue it, that we could do an off week or
Well, I didn't see that,
something.
me and you talked about some schedules coming up for the summer schedule, and those kind of go off of our schedule, so maybe one of those dates will fit.
Oh, maybe in July or...
I didn't see them in our packet, I didn't know if we got them out to the rest of the board.
Yeah, no, not at this point. no.
Maybe get them out to the rest of the board, and then see if one of those dates meet.
Yeah, and maybe if that's an off week.
Yeah, because we've changed up, we've gone to, I think it's 3 weeks from our next meeting before we meet, just, I'm away for a few weeks.
Yeah, because
And
it'll
then
be
we
the
go
4th and the
2 weeks.
18th, and then town meeting's the 23rd.
Correct.
And then we're talking about maybe
3
meeting
weeks from
mid-July,
now.
maybe mid-July, and then into August, beginning of
Right.
mid-August. Yeah, so that's a good idea, I didn't think of that, yeah.
So
So
check on-
because he was tied up the 4th and the 18th, so then, he wanted to see if we wanted to meet in between, but maybe in July, that might be a good.
Yeah, the
might be
third
a
week in
good-
July, I think we're meeting on that Wednesday, I don't know the date, but,
Mid-month there,
yeah.
yeah. Okay, all right, good.
Thank you.
I'll follow up on that and I'll get back to the board.
Anything else is, let me see any updates.
Yeah.
How about committee reports? Anybody? I'm sure we'll have an update on the budget within the next week.
Yes, yeah, we're meeting tomorrow afternoon.
Brings us to public comment. Is there any public comment this evening? Whoever wants to begin, come on up and state your name.
Karen Hamilton.
Yep, come on up and have a seat.
My name is Karen Hamilton, and I live on Pleasant Street. And it has recently come to my attention that there is a parking lot going to be installed across the street from my house. I've been told that this is a municipal lot. And if this is so, how is it going to benefit the municipality? If it's a nitro lot, as an abutter, why wasn't I notified?
Thank you. I think Donnie Lowe happens to still be here. Donnie, would you like to comment on that? I know that
Certainly,
we're
Mr.
through
Chairman.
the process.
Actually, I've actually met with this lady twice within the past week in my office, and I've actually gone over those questions with her. And I encouraged her that if she still had questions, she should come to the selectmen. So,
Absolutely.
this is a municipal lot, especially for the new selectmen. This is a project that's being funded under the More Jobs grant that we were awarded, I think we were awarded it in August of last year. We applied for it in May of last year, was awarded in August. It's a $665,000 grant that is specifically to create between 30 and 35 new parking spaces on Pleasant Street, which is town-owned property. Provide stairway access down to the Nipro parking lot
for any NIPRO employees who are making use of that, of those parking spaces. They're open to everyone. It is town-owned land, so it's open to anyone looking to park in the area. And it also addresses drainage issues on the property that NIPRO has had. So it's a joint partnership between the town and NIPRO as far as the grant is concerned. The town is the recipient of the grant. It's my responsibility to administer the grant. The benefit to the neighborhood is, there's multiple benefits to the neighborhood. It's going to greatly increase the safety in the neighborhood because the parking in the area right now is very, very hazardous. People, can park pretty much anywhere. It's not well delineated. And also that area where the parking is going in is very much an eyesore. It's all overgrown. It's a very old fence. And these are issues that these were positives that were brought out during the grant process. Like I said, we were, and to answer the other question, it is a municipal project. And abutters were not formally notified because there is no special permit required, there is no zoning variance required, so there is no process that would trigger the requirement for any notification of the abutters. This has certainly been very well publicized, in the papers, discussed multiple times at televised selectmen meetings, not the least of which, as far as the notification goes, we had a major event to publicize the award. The Lieutenant Governor came to town, presented us with the check that still is on display in my office. So this was very well publicized, and it is a major benefit to the neighborhood.
When will it be completed, Don?
We are going out to bid hopefully next week. I have to submit a revised timeline to the state. My projection is that it will be completed by the end of this calendar year, before the snow falls. Everything will be done. It's being done in conjunction with the other grant that we received to replace all the water lines on Pleasant Street and the surrounding area. I got approval from the state. Mr. McGowan had a great idea that if we could get approval from the state to combine the two grants into one bid award, then we could have one general contractor coordinating everything. So we didn't have two activities going on where we've got one contractor that's responsible for the water lines, another contractor responsible for the off-street parking, and if we had delays, get into finger pointing about who's holding up who. So I worked with the staff legal counsel that is provided to us by the state, worked out how the bid needed to be structured so we can separate the work, but do it as one bid. We know exactly how to charge out all the different activities. That's going to save us time and money on this project. So, and as far as the design goes, we have spent considerable months on the design. Any sound mitigation, any noise mitigation techniques that can be utilized, because obviously there are trees that are going to be removed from the area. That's unavoidable. Those techniques would be used, the best practice possible. But the fact is, trees are going to have to be taken down. There is no question about it.
Thank you, Don. Do we have a copy of a plan maybe that we could give to the concerned residents?
Mr. McDonald has met with her and has discussed the project with her.
I have not seen the plan.
Could we maybe, Mike, I don't want to bring Donnie into this, could we maybe see if Mr. McGowan could get a copy of the plan, how it will look at completion? I don't think she needs all the...
We're actually meeting with the engineers this week to review the final plan. Once the plan is finalized, that's the trigger for us to go out to bid. We're 90% there now.
Right, currently, those trees are the only very minimal protection we have from the noise generated by NIPRO. They put a new cooling unit in their School Street lot in November, right around Thanksgiving. It ran 24/7 for the first 3 months. Now it runs maybe 20 hours a day. The School Street parking lot is plowed every night during snowstorms. The plows go forward and then of course they back up. And when they back up, the noise they make. If there is a lot across the street, right on Pleasant Street, that's going to have to be plowed as well.
Yeah, it'll be plowed by some municipal parking lot, so.
Right, so I just don't see how the municipality will benefit from a lot on Pleasant Street. That's my objection.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
You else want to speak? There's one right behind you, John, and then we'll let you. Please state your name and address and welcome.
Thank you. Christine Latini, 127 Berlin Street. I'd like to take 2 minutes of your time this evening to address an issue, and this might go more quickly if I go from beginning to end. As board members, town solicitor, and town administrator, you have sacrificed time with your families and shown extreme dedication to the town. For that, you should be commended and respected. You have taken on the role of public servant, and as such, you serve the public. I am Joe Q. Public. For the most part, we have never been formally introduced. You may know my name, but you do not know me. You may have guessed from a t-shirt or two one town issue that I feel passionately about, but you do not know me. What we do know is that I'm a citizen of this town, and if we disagree, we should do so respectfully and courteously. If I am misinformed, it is your due diligence and responsibility to inform me respectfully and courteously. It takes a great deal for me to address you in this forum, and I do not take it lightly. And frankly, I didn't expect I'd be sitting here tonight talking with you. But what I saw 2 weeks ago during a public comment session was extremely concerning to me. If you are a new member of this board or town office, I ask that you not develop bad habits. If you are an experienced member of this board or town office, I ask that you reflect upon how you interact with the citizens of this town, citizens that you serve. Everyone behind me is a member of this community. They have taken time out of their busy lives, as have you, to address concerns and questions about matters that are important to them and this town. Please do not lose sight of this and treat these concerns and citizens with the respect we all deserve. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for coming in. John, did you want to...
John Wood, Small, 17 James Street. I'm also the chair of the Conservation Commission. The question I was going to ask before was, considering not knowing the intricacies of the discussion about the CR and so forth, but knowing that that is a condition and that the town has been engaging with the state on working on the CR, have we formally asked for extension to the grant in order to allow for the CR negotiations to finish?
I think I answered that a few weeks back. We had asked, and the state has shut us down completely. They said no.
So I guess, have we asked our state senators and reps to advocate on our behalf as well?
We have.
Okay. I was just concerned because I find it strange that the state would be so hard in this stance, knowing that if the town does decline to take the grant, the state no longer has any real leverage to force the town to sign the CR.
But I just want to caution you, John, there's no reason that this board or our town solicitor has given the state to think that we won't sign the CR. Negotiations are ongoing. They've never stopped. So we've always been in that mode. It's never changed. It's
Right.
never been on the board, so.
I just...
We submitted, I'll tell you, we're going to executive session, but we submitted our response 2 weeks ago, Bob, the day after we met. And we have not heard back from the state as of today, so it's been 2 weeks.
Right.
We don't know if we'll get it back in a week. We may not get it till September.
And I understand that, and that's why I wonder why the state does not want to provide an extension because of that. They're backing themselves as well as us into a corner that's not beneficial to either party.
I don't think, when we started this process, I mean, not the CR process, but when we started the grant process, and I might be mixing topics, but when we started that process, that was there, and I know John Gold knew it, that this issue could be a problem as we go forward. And unfortunately, it could be the main problem. So yeah, that was there, and I think everyone entered into that process understanding that. I think there are a number of individuals who tried to speed up the process, but I'll tell you, there's been some periods of time over the last year and a couple months, Tony, that we have gone, I want to say almost 4 months in between hearing from the state.
which is disappointing as a state taxpayer, and I guess I would just ask the selectmen to try one more time to highlight those time delay issues with the state and ask for their...
I think we asked our rep, Harold Norton, and Senator Chandler when they were out, I want to say 4 weeks ago, for the little roundtable we had, to again advocate on our side, we should say, and I'm sure they have. I have not heard anything to change my mind that they were successful. I was with both of them last Friday evening, and I was actually with Senator Chandler, Rep. Norton, Jim McGovern, and the governor, and none of them, and there were 4 other selectmen there, and they spent maybe more time than I did with them, and none of them had shared that view from the state had changed.
Okay. If possible, give the old college a try and write has a formal written letter a request been submitted to the state, to Secretary Bowles and the
I
governor?
believe we had sent a letter prior, at the last request at the roundtable. We did it in person. Again, as concerned citizens, send them a letter, send them an email. They serve you. Time is running out. We've got a 1-week extension to try and make something happen. Let them know.
Okay. And finally, I was just a little disappointed that you took a private comment from a private citizen during that discussion, but you didn't allow a member of the commission who had actually submitted the grant application to speak. And I realize you probably weren't planning on taking that, but...
I wasn't, and I should have realized that it may have opened up a can of questions or comments, and that wasn't my intention. I do try to treat everyone fair, and if I can take the questions or comments, I will. Unfortunately, sometimes when you do that, as in tonight, you realize that you've made a mistake and you need to regain the meeting. So I apologize for that, John.
Thank you very much.
Just 1 minute. Mr. Grady, did you want to say a few words and then...
I have no questions. What we have here is comments and observations. I guess should be questions and answers. We only have 2 times a month to come and talk.
Grady, name and address.
Russell Grady, 417 Wilson Street, Clinton, Mass. This is one of the 2 opportunities we have as citizens to come and speak with the board. And I'd rather not come up here with comments. I'd rather come with the questions that I have. I sit home and read in the paper, you see different things going on. I have a lot of questions. Tonight I just have 2, and the 2 that concern me are the 2 articles that are coming into town meeting relevant to the fire department here in Clinton. Both filed by citizen petition, which is our right as citizens to put things on the warrant. One of them changes your responsibilities as select board members greatly, I think. I mean, it puts you in charge of and responsible for our fire department, our fire and safety of my children, my grandchildren, myself. And I don't know that any of you have any experience in the firefighting area or the fire board, or you call firemen one time in your life or anything like that. I can't imagine that you were. Now, my question is, when I go to the town hall floor and vote at town meeting, should I vote to do what the petitions ask, or should I vote not to do what the petitions ask? What's your input? Each of you, what do you tell me as a voter that I should do? Because you're the leaders of our community, and you're the ones who I look to. When we get to town hall floor that night, there's going to be 3 or 4 people feverishly fighting for one and feverishly fighting against it on the other side, and then they're going to call for a vote. And things are going to change in the town of Clinton if it passes, or even if it fails. And I just wanted to ask each of you what your opinion of those articles are. Should we pass them or not pass them?
Thank you. And I think I'll address both questions. I probably shouldn't, but we will. And I won't answer you how I'm going to vote.
That's all I'm asking. I'm just looking for some input from my...
I want to tell you what my thought process is.
Okay.
I think every individual in town, as they come to that meeting, needs to make up their mind their own way. And they should be thinking, are you satisfied with our current chief and the decisions he's making before you take some responsibilities away from him on one article? And 2, by doing that, you're giving responsibility to a board to oversee a chief, not in any more responsibility. If the strong chief law, from what I understand it, is, what we'll be doing is that we have more say on the hiring and firing of the police station. I mean, on the fire station. Not that we're going to be running that station on a day-to-day going forward. So I guess that answers, I mean, we need a little bit more education. This is a citizen petition. Hopefully, we're going to see some information in the newspapers regarding why the citizens brought this forward. Hopefully, the night of the town meeting, citizens who signed that petition are going to stand up and talk about their reasons for bringing this issue to light.
So you're looking for, you as an individual now, I'm not speaking.
Me as an individual, I'm looking for more information.
Okay, no, but you're looking to have more say in the hiring and the firing of fire.
No, I'm not.
Oh, you're not? Okay, I thought that's what you said.
I said that's what one of these articles would give the board.
Right, and
not me in particular.
Okay, but are you in
favor?
favor?
I'm not looking for it.
Are you in favor of that article? That's what I'm asking you.
I haven't decided as of yet. If you come to the town meeting, you'll see how I vote.
Well, that's a nice answer. That's a nice
You do a lot of work out there in the community. And
Yes, I do.
applaud you for that, is trying to get as educated as you can. And again, I applaud you for that, and I'm sure that you're going to come prepared in your mind.
Well, I thought
one way or the other.
coming prepared would be to cover our town fathers and see what direction I should go in. I mean, what do any of you think? Do any of you have an opinion?
I'll defer to the rest of the board if they'd like to answer.
I'll ask each of you.
I'll give my opinion. I always have one, and it's just my opinion. But I'm going to tell you, I've always been in favor of strong chiefs, and it's something I...
So then you would vote no on both of the articles then?
Well, I'd vote no on I think the first one takes that.
Takes care of the second one, I guess.
So the other one becomes a moot.
All right, so you'd vote no. Mr. Sheridan, how would you decide on that?
At this point,
Yeah?
I would want to listen to both sides of the argument. I think
On the
that-
town hall floor? You'll wait till the argument?
Well,
Okay,
there are two
I'm just
issues
asking.
to it, and I would
Okay.
like to hear both sides.
All right, Mary Rose, what would you do?
I would do the same thing. I mean, this isn't the first time this article has come before town meeting.
But it's the first time it's going to drastically affect your responsibilities as selectmen. You should have an opinion.
Listen, it's the voters. It's a citizen's petition. It's up to the voters who come into that hall, who are going to make the decision as to where it's going to go.
And Mr. LeBlanc?
And we'll have a vote that evening, just like everyone coming through the hall.
If the citizens who put this petition forth can't strongly justify why they put it forth, I'm not going to vote in favor of it. The chief is responsible for running his department. If what this does is administrative oversight, that's one thing. If it strips him of his ability to do his job, I'm not in favor of stripping the chief of his power to do his job. The chief is the department head. He has to run his department. And they have to have some compelling arguments to strip him of those powers.
Yeah. If there was an article on the warrant this coming meeting that said that all selectmen board meetings would be held on Saturdays, the second and fourth Saturday of each month, not to start any earlier than 9 a.m. and no later than 2 p.m., would you have an opinion on that prior to the town meeting argument or the floor? I'm a little disappointed that you don't have an opinion, seriously. Except I'll give you Kevin, you explain how you feel about it, and Mr. Florentino did. But to wait to go to the town hall floor is unfair to the rest of the voters that are sitting home trying to figure out what is it. Who's in favor of this and who isn't? But it's going to come down to the night of the town meeting, I guess. And in a closing note, I thank you for recognizing me with my 2 questions. That was out of order for me to ask, because now I'm going to say something that's not going to make you any happier. Okay. The last meeting I watched on TV 2 weeks ago, the kindness and civility kind of left this room, or at least the chair that night. I watched the way you spoke to a woman who, when you told her to hurry up and get to your point. I've heard this before. Now, I watched that tape twice, Mr. Chairman.
I don't think those were my comments, but you're entitled to your opinion.
Mr. Chairman, if you watch the tape, those were your comments, and I really, we've got to do better than that as a board. I know you weren't having a bad night, and tonight, you really seem like you're having a good night, so I thank you for your patience and your time, and I really think we ought to get a little more input from our leaders prior to a town meeting. I know the Finance Committee tells us approved or disapproved, gives you an idea of where we're coming from. When these are petitioned by citizens, we should know where that's coming from, too. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Rayfield.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead.
if I may. You've been chairman since the annual election. I would just like to say that I think that you've done a great job. I think you treat everyone with respect. And I commend you. It's a very difficult position, very difficult seat to be sitting in. And just seeing the way that you show professionalism in this seat and with this board that is now seated, I think we all have a keen interest in doing the right thing for this town. And there may be people out there that disagree with what we do. And it's a difficult position to be in because you only see a portion of what transpires in town government. And I would just like to say, in fairness, Kevin, I think you, Mr. Chairman, I think you've demonstrated a keen ability to be sitting in that seat. And I commend you, and I support you, and I support my fellow board members, and I think you're doing a great job. And I have seen nothing but professionalism from you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Gloria, please.
Good evening, my name is Gloria Parkinson. I reside at 90 Haskell Avenue. What I'm going to say in these comments is not news, but I'm basing it on what I've heard in the meeting tonight, so I'm making observations on what has been discussed tonight. I'm speaking to you, our elected officials, as a profoundly concerned Clinton voter. It is about the self-help grant, or it is actually about the $353,000 that is going to be lost to Clinton voters because it is their bond and their tax override that money would be supporting. It is not going to the town's general fund, as we know. It has been decided tonight that 7 days that you, on behalf of the town, will decide whether or not the town of Clinton accepts the self-help grant for Rauscher Farm. I'd like to make a couple of observations. 7 days, very short time. The self-help grant was submitted, I believe, and if Don is still here, he'll correct me on the time, July of last year? Is that? End of July. Yes, the self-help grant was submitted to the state at the end of July 2007. That's many months ago. We discussed the wiki-peaky timeline at this public comment session 2 weeks ago, and as Attorney Gibbons pointed out, although the voters voted in 2001, the legislature did not change the details they needed to change in 2004. That is still 4 years ago. 7 days. Based on tonight's conversation, there seem to be 3 issues, and I was very heartened to hear that there are alternatives to these 3 issues about closing on the Rauscher Farm property in a very timely manner. The sewer agreement, we learn there can be a 1-year window of opportunity after the closing. The tenant, that is Mr. Rauscher's responsibility, and that the CEA report, at least on Mike's incredibly swift skim, doesn't look as if there are any strange monsters from the lagoon leaping out of the document in terms of contamination from the removed oil container. So it would seem then that the Rauscher Farm closure is doable in a very swift, timely manner. Therefore, the only obstacle is the CR on the wiki-peaky. Unfortunately, none of us really know any of the details of this because everything has been done in executive session. We don't know what the stumbling blocks are between the town and the state. However, my concern, Mr. Chairman, in a way spirals off what you said to Mr. Woodsmall, the chair of the Conservation Commission, which is with 7 days to go before a final decision, a decision that directly affects the voters of Clinton's wallet, that we aren't all, as our representatives and our officials, just working the phones. What I heard was that it's up to us, the voters, to work the phones. I may have misunderstood this, and I hope I'm open for correction. But I think what I am looking for as an engaged citizen is to see our elected officials as well as us, not abnegating our responsibility to do the phone business too, to phone our representatives. But I am looking to you, our officials, to shake as many trees every day if necessary to have some resolution to this situation as we look at 7 days and the money is likely gone for the Clinton voters. So that's my profound concern, to see us working as a team, our elected officials and the voters. We can do our part, but we need you right now to work extremely hard and to demonstrate, beyond anything else that has been demonstrated to this point, how strongly we, the town of Clinton, feel about obtaining that money for the voters of Clinton, for it is theirs, it is not the general fund money. Thank you.
Have a good night, Paul. Let's see, where are we? Roll into the, we all set with public comments? I didn't see anyone else.
Hi, my name is Joyce Carpenter Henderson. I live on Haskell Avenue. I'm not convinced leaving here tonight that you are going to take the responsibility that I am in fact going to take. I'm asking each of you on this board to contact Harriet Chandler, Jim McGovern, Ian Bowles, Bill O'Connell? Bob O'Connell.
Bob O'Connor, yeah.
Contact these individuals and see if this can be worked out. To have come this far toward a self-help grant to save 62 acres of land, the last remaining acreage in this town, is extremely important. I think it sends a message to all of us who participate here in Clinton, out of our own time, without pay, to make a grassroots effort to save our heritage, that we will make that effort. We will be contacting these legislators. We would also expect and plead with you this evening to do so as well. So I'm asking each of you to make that all-out effort to contact these individuals and see if this can be worked out so the deadline does not go by and we see in our newspapers that the select board of the town of Clinton has not acted in such a way to secure this self-help grant. That would be not very good for our citizens to learn that this board has not acted responsibly. As you probably know, there are many people in this town that have put out an effort to not only secure the grant, but also to follow up with that land to serve this town for generations to come. And it would damage ourselves as citizens of this town, and also you as a board, for you not to make an effort to turn the wheels of justice and make this happen. So I, Joyce Carpenter Henderson, go on record saying to you this evening that you have a responsibility as well as an opportunity to act. If I understood what was said earlier, and I hope I did understand it correctly, you have not contacted these legislators by letter in recent days. Is that correct?
For myself, it's correct.
It's correct. Well, then I am extremely worried that the self-help grant is slipping out of our hands needlessly, and that I expect you, as the elected officials on this board, to take the responsibility of sending letters to all of these legislators and letting them know the importance of this self-help grant. Otherwise, I'm going to assume that you did not act responsibly. I have no other assumption to make. Thank you.
Thank you.
As Mr. Chairman, I think as the board had indicated that the town had done that previously, early in the spring, so those...
That was not, Joyce's question was in the last few days, and the answer was no.
I mean, we could resend a new one.
But just clarification, Joyce, we were with them, as I think you heard, we were with the leaders of the state on Friday evening, and our concerns were passed on at that time.
I think it's the 7-day decision that's being made tonight is the key thing here.
I really, again, Gloria, I don't think that they will change their minds on extending the deadline. I could be wrong, and hopefully I am.
Right, I meant
But
the board...
that's not, they have nothing to do with the issues that are pending. They're in Bob's hands, they're in the state's hand. As far as the CR goes, we're waiting for a response from them. They could take, again, 2 months and not reply. So I do hear what you're saying. You have been here every time we've had a meeting and voiced your concerns. They're not falling on deaf ears. The clock is ticking. And I've said this, and I have not changed my stance on this. I've told you this for 2 months. I have serious reservations, or I've had serious reservations if there was enough time to pull this off. Tony and myself disagree, and that's fine.
The other point, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make is the fact that the purchase of the farm and the self-help grant are two distinct processes. The purchase of the farm is already underway. It's whether or not we have the time to secure the self-help grant. And the two keep getting commingled in discussion. There's the purchase of the farm, and then there's the acquisition of the self-help grant. Even if we do not acquire the grant, we're still purchasing, moving forward with the purchase of the farm. So I don't want people misled to think that if we don't get this self-help grant, we're not buying the farm. That is not true.
I appreciate that clarification, Jim, and that is my point. My point is losing the money because it's the voters' money. And my concern now is the board has taken a vote tonight to take a final vote 7 days from today on whether or not to inform, told Mr. Lowe to inform the state.
That vote's been taken, so if nothing changes, he's going to inform the state. I'll be happy to talk to the press and do a release that the grant's gone or that the grant has been secured, so. Thank you. Let's,
So, Mr. Chair, go ahead, Bill.
I'm just going to stay for a 5-minute recess.
Yep, so, but if Tony want to make a comment prior to?
Well, I'd like to make a motion, based on what I've heard tonight. I mean, I think it would be prudent on this board to act on behalf of the citizens to send a letter to the folks mentioned by Joyce Carpenter, specifically Harriet Chandler, Jim McGovern, Ian Bowles, Bob O'Connor, and Harold Naughton, expressing our support for obtaining the self-help grant, because the citizens and the town worked very hard to to get the grant. So I think we need to send a letter saying, you know, we have a 1-week or 7-day timeline, and we want to advocate getting that grant to make sure that anything that needs to be done to obtain it is done.
I'll second the motion.
Can we just add, is there any possibility of an extension if we're that close? If we close in July, if we close in 10 days from the 30th, you know, something. It's a wiki PPCR.
Gloria? Mike, that previous letter we had sent, I believe, asked for the extension. I don't know.
Asked to remove the grant condition. So if you want to clarify to remove the extension condition and/or extend the time frame if we're close.
So I'll amend my motion to, per Kathy Sheridan, to and/or extend the timeline to obtain it. Thank you.
Any other discussion? It's been seconded by Jim. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous, George. Mike, can we see if we can get that out tomorrow?
Sure, absolutely.
Motion to take a 5-minute break before we go into just one more issue on our agenda, which is the finalizing of the draft warrants for the town meeting. And then we'll be back, and we have 2 executive sessions after that, so 5-minute break.
Just isolated some of the articles.
With us tonight, Mr. Garbage will come forward. His article would be Article 17, and he's just asked to address the board on that issue.
Yeah, I haven't read Article 17, but I have talked to Bob Gibbons, town solicitor. The reason for the article would be the following, that we have completed the elementary school project, and because of the overseeing of that project by an excellent board, and that board probably led by the clerk of the works and the gentleman that was probably most instrumental in this, Mr. Philip Bailey, we were able to save monies on that project, and I think approximately the monies left over today are $145,000. Is that correct, Mr.?
Yeah, that's correct.
What we would like to do, and we haven't addressed the punch list. Let me start that first. We've addressed some of that punch list, and the reason we haven't addressed all of that punch list would be for the following reasons. One, we did not settle out with the architect. Second, we didn't settle out with the contractor, nor the electrical contractor until approximately 3 years in to after the project was closed out. And under the leadership of Mr. Philip Bailey, we did settle those out and saved a substantial amount of money, of which you're looking at a part of that. What we are asking for is to take $125,000 of that money, leave $20,000 of that for the punch list, and take $125,000 and apply that for the old fire station. Now, we have taken a grant at the old fire station from the Historical Commission, which kind of handicaps us as far as what we can do in that building. That means anything, for example, the windows, which if you look, the front facade has been done over, but the back and the sides are a mess. We have to put the same type windows and the architecturally same windows as the Historical Commission wants from Boston, which means the price tag is probably going to be $50,000+. Knowing that, and I spent the day with the elementary school principal, Mrs. Jerry Sargent, that we have an overcrowding issue at that elementary school already, we would like to take that money and start to renovate the old fire station, which is a sound and beautiful building, and create some space over there for my offices, maybe the special needs offices, and open up educational space across the street. Plus, in the bottom of the old fire station, where you know the fire trucks were kept, it's a wide open area that we can also use for educational space. So I think it's a wise decision to be able to take the monies that is left and to apply that to the old fire station. And it must be done this way because it has to be issues that would be something would be borrowed for 20+ years on something like the elementary school project, which we have completed. So again, the board has done an excellent job in saving money, and I think we'd like to use what we had left to be able to make something even better for the town.
Thank you,
Chairman, if I could just,
Please.
I have to agree with Jerry, that building is an incredible building, and it would really, it sounds like a great project for the schools, and I think it's for the future students. I endorse it. I think it's a great idea, Jerry.
Thank you.
Yeah. Like I said, that is a beautiful building.
It's gorgeous.
It
You
is
can't build
really,
it
yeah,
like that
absolutely, absolutely.
Have you actually been able to find someone who will mimic the windows that need replacement?
We've had, I actually went out and got prices from 3 different companies. When I first saw the first price, I said, I gotta get another one. Then I went to call the Historical Commission, and I said, listen, you've got to give us a break. We want to put an aluminum clad or a vinyl clad window in there. We don't want any maintenance, because if you look at the front facade, it's all painted. It needs to be repainted again. They would not bend on that issue. They wanted the same architectural windows in the front. So we're looking at $50,000+.
Most historic commissions, and I know this because a friend of mine's on a historic commission in Douglas, and they just went through this with their own building, that they had to replace the windows, and there were only 6 people in the entire state that did these types of windows. So I can understand the cost. There's no way around it.
No.
But once it's in the historical district and it's accepted as a, that's what you, yeah, that's what you have to do. Yeah.
Comments, Tony? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of second what Mary Rose is saying. It's a fantastic building. Be good to see people in there.
Yes, it would.
Occupied.
And I think we can save some money to the tune of, or
through the venue of the construction tech people at Clemson High School, we have students that are in a construction tech program, Mr. Crawley, that we can bring down and do a lot of work, and the labor will be free, we don't need any materials, so that's a big cost savings we're looking at too.
Thank you, Jerry. I think you've got the support. I mean,
Mr. Chairman, just for the board, that article will be changed to reflect that amount. Before, we just said the balance, but they need some of the money for the current project right now, so we will put the actual amount. And working with the solicitor on language for all articles, it actually has been given some good input on some changes there, so we'll have it finalized by.
we don't need a vote to support that by the board. I know we have Finance Committee on here and School Department. I'm sure they're both supporting.
I guess the question I would have, Mr. Chairman, is when do we have to finalize this?
Tonight, I believe.
I think by tonight, I mean, if the board was meeting next Wednesday, you could take another shot at it, but in order to make the publishing deadline, we'd have to have it in the paper next Friday. So hopefully, with a final action tonight, we could move ahead on the wording with the solicitor and then get it to the newspapers by early mid next week. So.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if it's required, but I'll move that the board support Article as it reads today, 17. It'll change, obviously, the number, but what the school department wants to do. That's
The only change is going to be, instead of saying the remaining balance of funds, it's going to state $125,000.
But I think the intent of the article, I would move that we support the school department.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you, Jerry, for coming in.
Thank you, Jude.
And I think, Mr. Chairman, as Selectman Dicko indicated, probably these numbers will all change, but just to, as the overall intent of the articles, if the board would endorse them, and then we can put them in the final format as we go forward.
Don, would you like to come up? I know you're here. Forget the article number. If you can look in your packet, so I don't have to keep going. I believe it's I thought it was Article 20.
Oh, 20 for the,
To see if the town will vote to accept the local options defined in Chapter 59. This was a request that Dave Bear had sent to us.
Right, and Mr. Baird is away on vacation this week and was able to be to this meeting, so he asked Mr. Rowe if he could come in to speak to the article on his behalf.
Which number?
Article 20. Don, any comments? I know, myself and you have talked, I've talked to Dave, and my arms around this article, and I'll be honest with the board, I don't have a good comfort level with this article. And Don, things have changed from earlier today when we talked.
I had this presented to me by Mr. Baird, probably about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. He had felt that it would be a good complement to the biotech overlay districts that we're looking to create on a different article. If we were attracting, if we did attract a biotech incubator company in here, they would be a startup. They would be most likely an R&D type of company, and the article addresses the waiving of personal property tax for a company that's performing R&D. That was the way that he presented it to me. It made sense to me. Subsequent to that, I started thinking about, and the assumption was we have no one doing R&D in Clinton today. So I started thinking about that some, and as I think I said to you, it was probably Saturday morning as I was shaving, this kind of popped into my head, and which goes to show what's going on in my mind on a Saturday morning, I guess. And I almost slit my throat because I said, well, wait a minute, we've got companies in town that must be doing R&D, and what would the impact be? But the companies that I thought of are manufacturers, and by definition, manufacturers in Massachusetts do not pay tax on personal property. That's waived because you are a Massachusetts manufacturer. So that concern went away. But I can't quantify for you if 2 or 3 biotech incubator companies came in here doing R&D. I can't tell you what potential tax hit that would be. I have no way to baseline that. All I can tell you is that, to the best of my knowledge, we don't have any companies in town that would be considered R&D that are currently paying property tax, personal property tax, I should say. tax on personal property, that we would lose revenue. If there are any, I don't know about them. But I don't know what the impact would be going forward if we attracted new business.
And I don't know if you concur with me, Don, but my recommendation to the board would be to table this until we get a better handle on what the impact could be to us. Maybe we put it on for next year.
Mr. Chairman, I don't feel that way because I just read the...
Who did?
Well, no, I mean, I read it in the packet. I just read what was in the packet.
Yep.
And it seemed like it was something that could be granted to someone coming in new that was setting up shop. And it was at the discretion of our, planning boards and, the boards that deal with the permitting and taxing authorities. So that it's granted, it's not a given. So, I mean, I think there's control by the town to decide.
You may well be right, Mr. Florentino. That's not my understanding, but I don't claim to be intimately familiar with this because I didn't create it. So I went by what the brief conversation I had with David. You could easily be right. The way I interpreted it was, if this is something that's voted on by the town affirmatively, then anyone who would qualify for it would receive that break. I didn't see a mechanism in what I read that would allow for any discretion on any board, whether it's the assessors or the planning board or the selectmen or whoever. My interpretation was, if this is approved, then anyone who fits that criteria would enjoy that tax break. But I don't know that I'm right, but that's just my interpretation.
That was my interpretation also, Donnie, and I think that was my interpretation through discussions with Dave before we went on vacation. So, all I'm asking is that we have Dave Bear and maybe Donnie research it.
Well, I mean, the statute clearly says, I think
you gave it, right?
The following property shall be exempt from taxation. It doesn't, that was my issue that I raised. It doesn't appear to give any board any discretion. Once this is approved, the corporations that fall under this umbrella would receive the personal property tax exemption. You can't pick and choose.
Right. Again, it's a pleasure to the board.
No, that changes it, but I do think it's an article that, it's for town meeting vote. Now, if the people choose that, then they've chosen it knowing that that's the case, right? And, and I don't want to take that off without giving the people that are voting at town meeting
Okay, my question would be then, who's going to explain it?
It would be David. I mean, David is the sponsor of the article. David would be the person who would be fielding the questions. I just want to reiterate, if anyone asks me at town meeting what the potential revenue impact is of this, I can't answer that question. I don't know, for companies who do pay tax on personal property, I don't know what percentage of their overall tax that is. I'm just not familiar with that.
Mr. Chairman, when is David going to be back? Do we know?
Mike?
I think the end of this week. Yeah.
Is he back in time? If he so desires to remove it, he could?
Oh, my suggestion, Mr. Chairman, would be that when he gets back to have a sit down with the administrator, and then he could,
But we're discussing it tonight and we're going to approve it. If we leave it in.
Oh, but I thought we had a week's flexibility. I mean,
before it goes to printing next Friday?
Yeah, that's all I'm saying, is that if it gives Michael a chance to sit down with David,
Is that okay, too?
and then he could always get back to you and, let you know.
I'd feel more comfortable if Dave said, you know what, I'd like it taken off, and then...
So I'm just saying, we could perhaps just leave it open, that article, until
Thank you, Donnie.
someone has a chance to talk to David to see.
Great. Mike, did you want to go into another article?
I think it was Mr. Richards here from the Personnel Board.
Mr. Richards, would you like to address the board? We'll move to your articles. Is it one article now, Mike, or two? You just handed us a second.
No, just one. It's on the separate sheet.
I have Article 21 on the sheet you hand out. Has that now been amended to Article 19 on the second sheet?
Right.
So we can cross that one off?
More detailed wording.
Mr. Richards, welcome.
Thank you.
You're on.
Good evening. Thank you for giving the Personnel Board an opportunity to appear before you tonight. I'm Larry Richard, I'm Vice Chairman of the Clinton Personnel Board. And I hope you'll bear with me if I spend most of the time looking at my notes, because at my age, my memory is not as reliable as it should be, and my wife would verify that if you'd like. Unfortunately, our chairperson, David McIntyre, was not able to join us tonight. He very much wanted to be here, but could not adjust his travel plans to do so. He's out of state on business, and he left the following message for me to deliver on his behalf. And we understand you have a very busy agenda tonight, and we'll deal only with this bylaw proposal at this time. As you know, we have proposed making a number of revisions in the personnel bylaw that were submitted to the town solicitor and the Board of Selectmen for their approval. Most of the revisions were to correct grammatical errors and numerical clarifications. We felt the revision proposing to add language to the annual performance evaluation section was necessary to add emphasis for the need of the department heads and appointing authorities to make sure that they get their completed evaluation forms requesting any merit increases to the Personnel Board by October 15. That deadline is the deadline submitted to us by the Finance Committee. It is our understanding that this is necessary to avoid midterm adjustments after the town's budget has been voted on and accepted. However, back on December the 6th, 2006, when we originally put these revisions together, the language reflected the frustrations of the prior board members with getting the evaluations on time and just getting them at all. And the language is stronger than this board would like to see, and we would like to revisit this proposed revision. In addition, we recently discovered that the sick leave revision, which we felt corrected an error in math for the annual accumulation of 12 days based on 1 day per month instead of 1.5 days, in fact, results in a reduction in benefits for our non-union employees. The Personnel Board are the advocates for the non-union employees. We're not in the business of advocating reductions in their benefits, but that in our misunderstanding of that particular paragraph, and if you were to read it in the bylaw, you would find that when you get to the end of one line where it starts to develop the formula, the word one appears here. And when you go down to the next line, you'll find parentheses, 1.5, end parentheses. So you have 1 here, 1.5 here. We said, well, the 1.5 must be wrong because 12 months in a year should equal the 12 annual maximum limitation. However, that's not the case. The one here should have had the words and a half after it instead. We weren't aware of that. And so we need to revisit. This was not our intent to remove any benefits or reduce any benefits, but to clarify the benefits. And we need to clarify them further, so we need to revisit this item. Therefore, tonight we would like to ask the Board of Selectmen to withhold or withdraw our proposed bylaw revisions from the warrant and not put them in for this year so that we can revisit these important items and submit them again at a later date. That's the main reason I'm here. The second reason I'm here is because we've taken it unto ourselves to give you a periodic report of what we're working on and what items that we need your help, guidance, the town solicitor's advice on, because being an independent board, we can sometimes go off on a tangent that we don't know you folks either have knowledge that we can't go there, or it is something beyond our prerogative. And so that we don't spend a lot of our time on errands that are not going to bear fruit. We want to periodically keep you up to date. I don't want you to react to this tonight because of the time limitations. I'd like to pass out this June 4th report to you, and we would like to ask you to schedule us on your agenda at some further time to come back and discuss this item.
We'll be happy to do that, Mr. Richard, for you. So I just want to get it straight. We're taking 19 off, Mike. Is there any other articles that, I don't remember any other articles besides 19 and 21, and both the articles are off?
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Richard. If you give those to Mike, he'll make sure that everyone gets one in their packet to read and review for a future meeting that Mike will schedule with your, with the personnel board. Sure. And, you know, just while we have you, Mr. Richards, if you could go back and just update the board, because we have some new members, as to what you have been working on or what you've been asked to work on. I don't know if that's in that report. It could be.
Well, I can give you the Reader's Digest very quickly here if you'd like.
No, just in a letter format, something easy for us just to read and say, here's where we've been working, just to bring everyone up to speed.
I think that's what.
And that could happen. That's great.
Mr. Chairman, could I get clarification? Article 21, is that from the personnel board?
Article 21, I thought was from the personnel board.
I think it was the original one from the last meeting. The original draft.
A municipal property one?
No, it can't be 21.
No. The first draft from 2 weeks ago.
Oh, so what does that reflect on this one then? Is it 19?
Right.
So we've only taken one off.
Which is, what's on the other one?
19, which is,
what?
I don't know what it is.
That's the one I'm looking for.
Okay. Just so,
Yeah, just so we're clear.
yeah.
Is it the same article? But you have two, Mike gave you an update here, Kathy.
Yeah, and
And
it's
there's an article that mirrors it, which is Article 19 on the other one, so it is number to number.
Right. The original one was just a placeholder because they didn't have the actual wording from the last meeting. And then with these new, with the new wording, I want to give you the exact wording today. And again, all these numbers are all going to change because if we insert those new articles on that separate page, it's going to reconfigure the whole warrant. So that's why there was confusion. I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Richards, for coming in. Okay. If you give those to Mike, we'll get you on the next agenda or whenever you're available. Thank you. All right, Mike, can we go back now to these articles and run through them and see if we're okay with this? And I think we've reviewed these already, so this should go relatively quickly.
But I don't know if you want to do the, again, if you just...
I don't want to read them all, I just want you to...
No, but the ones on the separate sheet would be new, so these would be different. And then I think you could go through quickly the big packet. It would just be looking at this.
Let's start with the big packet.
Okay.
And we'll take these new ones right at the end. Because the new one, the big packet should go quickly.
Right. Right.
Fire away.
Okay. The first, this is the most recent version that was in the packet to this week for the 6th. The first page are all the standard articles that we discussed at the last meeting. The second page, again, 5, 6, 7 are all standard articles that are on every year. 8 is a one cruiser for the police department. 9 is the retroactive pay for the police department. 10, on the next page, 10 is the funding for the revaluation for the assessors. 11 is the money for the water tank on Burnett Hill. 12 is the money for Parks and Rec to do repairs at Savage Field. Their other article was removed, so that is no longer on there, the 30,000, that was removed. The next article, 13, is funding for, to redo the monument, the war monument here in front of the town hall. I think I gave the board a cost estimate of that in the packet this week, which showed what work would be done. 14, this is article, the 46,000, which was that to totally remove those playbills and send them to Alabama and recast them. And this, sorry.
Well, I was just going to speak to that article. Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that we remove this article. 10,000 was approved at last town meeting. to start some work on it, and I think that we need to at least look and see what we can get done for the 10,000.
It's the pleasure of the board.
So,
Is that a motion?
yeah,
I'll
move it
second
as a
that.
form of a motion.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Being done, all in favor?
Aye.
14 is gone, man.
Thank you. The next item is $5,000 to remove oil, underground oil tank at the library. The next item is in this draft, but it's also on the separate sheet because it's a new item.
So let's scratch the packet, which has 16, and then we'll talk about it on the other one?
Right.
Yep.
I mean, it's the same article, so either
Yeah,
way.
but the wording might be a little different, that's fine.
Is the wording the same, Michael?
Yeah, the wording is the exact same. It's just that, again, on the separate sheet, I just try to isolate any new articles. But some of them were available for the weekend when I did this draft, but there were others that came in after that. So it is the exact same wording, it's just highlighting that it's a different
Well,
item.
Mr. Chairman, then I would move that we approve Article 16 as it's in the version that we have, because it's the same
Make it
as
easier.
Article 17, just so that,
Same as Article 7?
Right.
it's the
Yeah,
same thing.
whatever.
Right.
So we can take that off the
This
other
is the
page.
article the board asked to put on. The solicitor came up with language relative to the duties of the town administrator.
Yep.
So I'll do that in
Just
the
like
form of a
that.
motion.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Next one is Jerry's.
The next is the one Mr. God just spoke about on the elementary school. The next one after that is the
Bridge maintenance.
authorization to acquire easements for the Water Street Bridge. The next item is again an easement project, authorization for the Nitro Pleasant Street project. Article 20 is the one that Mr. Lowe just spoke to about the
We'll talk to,
RFP that we're going to hold on.
We'll talk to him when he gets back.
21, Article 21 is also on the separate sheet. That one is the one that the building inspector last meeting asked to put an article, the new article on, which would allow any building fines and fees to go to a municipal lien. The solicitor may want to speak to this further, but I think on reading of the statute, I think the solicitor's opinion is that the actual fees that are going to be allowed to go to lien have to be enumerated in the article. So I think we're going to have to meet with the building inspector and ask him
I think he submitted fees
which
on
ones that we're looking to do.
He submitted fees at the time, I believe.
Well, he submitted fees that he was asking the board to increase and to add new fees and increase fees, so the board acted on it. But I think he initially was asking to put any fine that he has on a building violation, to allow that to go to a lien. So I don't know if we want to open up to every building fee that was out there, or just a fine in Mr.
He's gonna define, enumerate which ones he intends to apply under this lien provision, because the statute says that a separate vote at town meeting or by city or town council is taken for each type of charge or fee. So if he may not want to, some of these fees he may not care, doesn't care if he's going to lien them, but Tony must have a handful or however many that he intends to apply this lien. He's going to list those in the article.
That's fine.
It shouldn't be a big deal. I'm sure he knows which ones he wants to apply.
So Mike, you're going to work with him to get
Yeah, I
those?
had a meeting with him in the morning. I think there were mostly violations
Yeah.
and penalties that people don't pay. And if they're an absentee landlord, it's hard for him to track down any of these fines that he assesses for violations.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we accept that article as it'll be revisions made through the building inspector, the solicitor, and town administrator.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? It's unanimous. 22, Mike?
22, 23, 24, and 25 all deal with the expedited permitting. Again, Mr. Lowe, I think, has left, but apparently there are 4 properties that the Economic Development Office and the Master Plan Committee was looking to designate 4 properties for this 43D. And apparently, each property needs its own separate designation. So we can't do them in one group article. They have to be done individually. So that one article that we thought we were going to do for 43D turned into 4. So,
naturally.
And the next article is the biotech zoning. which was a one-sentence placeholder that turned into a 5-page article to enumerate all the details of this new biotech overlay district.
Which is fine. Brings us to 27.
So that's what that item is for.
27 is the same as the new 30, right?
Right, yeah, exactly. What I did on that one is it just needed the solicitor to give me a little more claritative language on that. So the 30 is the language that we would want on that article. It would just allow, instead of, I was just putting in to accept the provisions of the acts and resolves when the statute was passed. But the solicitor would prefer that we actually accept the Mass General Law pursuant to that section of the general law.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that.
The article number 30.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I'll move that Article 27 that we're looking at is now 30 with the new language to be accepted by the board to be brought to town meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second that.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you. 28?
The next article is the article to increase the town's quota of liquor licenses by two.
Yep, talked about that.
And again, I'm working with solicitor on language on that.
20, yep. 29
The
are all,
remaining 5 articles are the citizen petitions in the order as they were provided by the town clerk.
So-
Those are on the second draft, and then I came up with this separate sheet here, which the
right.
first article.
Yeah, we're on yeah, so we're just on this one
Yeah,
now.
so I don't
Mike.
know if you want to go through that yourself or.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, 16.
The first article is just, the board had discussed during the budget deliberations about retroactive wages for the employees, the staff at the senior center. They had gotten in October 2006, Personnel Board had approved wage increases, and they were funded in a 3-year time schedule, funding schedule by the Finance Committee. And there was some discussion about trying to make up those retroactive.
Yeah, and these are the numbers that will bring them whole.
Right. If they had gotten the actual amount on the date that it was approved, so their salary plus COLAs each subsequent year to bring them to a level that they would have been if they had gotten the implementation on October 2nd of 06, which is the date that it was funded, it was approved by the Personnel Board. These are the numbers that it would represent, would be the director and the dispatcher.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we include this in our warrant for town meeting.
Do we have a second? Under discussion, this is a new one, so I know we talked about it when we were doing the budget process, but there's no comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. It's unanimous, Joyce. 17, Mike, do we?
The next one's one we just
Yep.
discussed on the
18.
town administrator's duties. 18 is an amendment to the budgeting bylaw, administrative bylaws.
And the words that we're striking on that, do you want to talk about that, Mary Rose? Or
Yeah,
Mike?
the words that we're striking from that is the last paragraph that states that only the Finance Committee can bring the budget to town meeting. It would strike that and would give the ability for the Board of Selectmen, if in the future there was, as we did in 2000, have that ability to bring 2 budgets to town meeting. So it's
Right.
just restoring the right of the Board of Selectmen to exercise that if they so saw.
Yeah, if the subcommittees cannot come to agreement.
Which was
Is
always,
that
they were always
the
silent to it
stipulation?
before,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So the finance
So if it's
would-
unresolved, then to
Right.
move forward. Okay.
I'll move that we accept the article.
Do I have a
for town
second?
meeting.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Mike, 19, we just deleted, right? 24,
Done.
we're done, right? These
Well,
are
that's the one
all.
they're going to talk to Tony on.
Yep, and 20, and 30 here has been
Yep.
the same. Mike, do we need a motion to accept and move forward, or?
Yes, if the board is willing to accept kind of a general acceptance of those articles as submitted.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, sorry,
I was
with the
just gonna say-
specific, with the specific eliminations and withdrawals and changes as discussed.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that the administrator reconfigure the articles obviously the numbers are going to change and what have you, to be ready to go to the Finance Committee and then to the papers
Do we have a
for
second?
our June 23rd annual town meeting.
Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
All those, any discussion?
Yeah,
Go
just
ahead.
under discussion, I just want to thank, the town administrator and solicitor and everyone else involved with, building this warrant up. I know it's a tremendous amount of work, it's a lot of research, and we got a lot on here, and it looks pretty good, so I appreciate that hard work and diligence.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mike.
And the numbering of this will fall in place as they are here provided.
Thank you. So, any further discussion? Being none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? It's unanimous, Joyce, that we move forward with that warrant. At this time, I think we're going to go into executive, is there a need to go into executive session tonight, Bob, on the, seeing we have no information?
I gave the update in the public forum that essentially, we sent the revisions to the state wildlife for their input on the 21st. Mike and I spoke with Phil Truesdale on the 22nd, and we're still waiting their reply. And I would anticipate we'll get it back in the short term.
Yeah, I would expect it to be very soon, and just, again, so everyone is aware, during our discussions, they were made aware that the board was meeting on June 4th, so that was expressed to them, that would be our next meeting. If we were able to have a reply, the board could entertain it on this night, and we're still waiting for it.
When you get those, would you just let me know when you get them, so maybe we'll move forward with a meeting, or maybe not, but at least I'll be aware of that.
I do have a copy for the board, which I can reach you of, from our last meeting, when I went the next day and made the revisions and highlighted it in red line. I'll give you an updated red line. It's dated 5/22.
Thank you.
That'll be the revision of the state's country road.
Is there a need, Mike, to go into executive session on Article 3 on the Public Works Union negotiations? I'm not sure if we have an update on that, or...
Yeah, just quickly.
Okay. And I do not believe we'll be coming out of back into open forum tonight. So I don't think there's a need for anyone to hang around or for that meeting. Requires a roll call vote to go into executive session. Kathy?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move
So
to go
moved.
into executive session
Second.
under Article 3.
Second.
Roll call vote. Kathy? Tony?
Aye.
Mary Rose?
Aye.
Jim? Aye. And the chair votes aye. So good night. Have a good rest of the evening. Okay, I guess we got 5 minutes while he breaks down the...
And Shane, a little acknowledgement for,
Please do.
working with cable.
Should we bring them out from
Sure,
behind the camera?
they've
You want to
done
come
a
out
great
from behind the
job.
cameras? They're refusing, but
Oh, okay.
nice job.
Good job, guys.
Shane Buffton and Sean Gannon,
Brett.
Brett Gannon. Do a great job.
Yeah.
Good job, guys.
Thank you. We'll take 5 minutes while they break the equipment down.